in my hands is the second sweater that I ever made. Does that make sense? Hello, welcome back to my channel, Knits by Mandy. My name is Amanda, and today I'm going to be taking a look back at some of my previous projects and comparing them to some newer projects that I finished recently. So I got inspired by this video because I am gearing up for what I made this year videos. Those are my absolute favorite videos to watch. They were kind of my gateway into knitting YouTube and knitting social media in general, and kind of like they really inspired me to start knitting garments and pick up my needles again and get back into this. So it's been about 2 years now since I started knitting my first sweater in 2020, which I've now actually repurposed as a tree skirt for my mini tree. You may notice that these are all Barbie ornaments. I collected them. I got them every year as a kid. I'm not obsessed with Barbie, but these are just something that I happen to have. And I feel like I need to make that distinction anytime I show someone this. But this is my little mini tree. I have it set up, trying to get in the holiday spirit. I know it's a little early, but I'm gonna be spending a lot of time with my family. So I wanted to enjoy the tree while I'm still in my apartment. So anyway, let's go ahead and start this retrospective. What I'll be doing is comparing two similar garments and kind of talking about why I chose that pattern, the differences in construction, the differences in fiber, and the differences in the techniques that I've used. So this isn't necessarily going to be a pattern review, but you may see some new pieces on here that I haven't talked about in recent podcast episodes, but everything that you may not have seen in recent episodes would be in my 2021 year in review video, which was actually the first video that I posted. So we're almost coming up on a year of Knits by Mandy on YouTube, which is really exciting. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm very inspired by our Knits and Pearls, and that kind of inspired my setup today, like in front of my IKEA shelves, the hangers. Yeah, I'm just switching up the location. I wanted you all to see my tree. The first items I have today are actually camisoles. We'll jump back to summer before getting into sweaters that I've knit. And so one of the first ones that I knit was this one. And this is Not Your Grandmother's Knits, that is a designer, and the pattern is called the Magnetic Force Tank. And it's really supposed to kind of emulate a silk cami, and it's knit with Lion brand Truboo, which is a bamboo yarn, which is super drapey to kind of emulate that color. So from what I remember, this is a bottom-up construction, and then you use short rows, and there are some increases. Yeah, those are increases to the top, and then you use short rows to create kind of the drapey cami part, the cowl, and then you use I-cords for the straps. So the construction isn't great. I don't think I gave it my all when finishing this tank top. To be honest, I got really frustrated with the fiber. I did not enjoy using this yarn, and I think this is a really good example of something that I knit and I like the look of the finished object, but I would never choose to work with this yarn again just because of how splitty it was. And what else do I have to say about this pattern? The other thing about the yarn is I don't feel like it wore very well. So you can see maybe kind of under the armpits, it doesn't look nice, and I don't think that the straps look that nice either. So honestly, I don't really wear this that much. This also felt trapped to something that I did a lot when I first started knitting, and I just cropped everything. Everything is just really short. And I still talk about how I like to make things waist length, but some are just a little too short, and you'll see that in some other items as well. I don't know if that was just me being eager to get items done and just being I don't need to make it longer, or I was worried about it looking frumpy or too long. But yeah, it's a phenomenon that comes up in my early knits for sure. So this was a lesson in German short rows. This was, I think, the second time I did German short rows. They aren't perfectly executed, but you know, beginning knitting, that happens. I kind of like this video because it gets to showcase like some of the imperfections about things that I've made as well, and like showcase how much I've learned. So I like that. So overall, this is a pattern that I probably wouldn't make again. I don't reach for this a lot, and I think because I actually have like a silk cami that looks like this, and I honestly just think it looks nicer than how this yarn has ended up wearing over time. So that is this tank top, and then we'll compare it next to one that I recently finished this summer, and this is Camisole No. 5 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So in comparison, this tank top is not supposed to be flowy. It's actually rather form-fitting. It has a high neck. It's knit in 2x2 rib. And this is knit in Knitting for Olive, their merino, which I also don't know if I would choose again for this garment, just because I think I underestimated how warm a merino tank top would be, especially that I live in a very humid climate. It's like the summers are hot. So I remember I wore this to a concert and I was like, this was the worst idea I've ever had, even though this is like such a cool girl tank top to wear to a concert. It was so sweaty. So I don't know if I would choose this fiber again as well. And the construction for this is knit top down. You knit, you start with the straps. You do provisional cast on with the straps. You knit the front, you knit the back, and then you join them in the round. And then you go ahead and add the armbands and the neckband, the collar as well. The only new thing that I did here was double knitting in the round and like picking up stitches. I've never done that before, and I think I did a pretty good job. However, this is another one where the wear on the armpits, I don't love it. It's already kind of looking ucky. This join was my issue. That was the Kitchener join, but like it's pilling a lot, and I guess that's to be expected when you're wearing like wool in such a high friction area. But I think I'd maybe opt for a cotton merino blend if I were to ever knit this again. I definitely wear this more than the other tank top. I just think this has like a nicer look and quality of finish to it. Like, I think it just looks like a nicer finished object altogether, to be quite honest. But yeah, so I feel like between these two, let me put this one back on the hanger. I feel like it shows almost a refinement of technique. That sounds so obnoxious, but I feel like these look really different, right? They just look, I feel like completely different garments, and I feel like you can tell this is something that I knit when I first started to learn how to knit, and this is something a little more, it just looks more like a piece of clothing. Does that make sense? It looks more like a permanent piece of my wardrobe, where this maybe looks like something trendy that I bought, like fast fashion, even though I knit them both. And all this to say, again, these aren't like pattern reviews, but these are kind of, I'm taking a look at what choices I made with the patterns in both the fibers and what I've learned. So I just want to reiterate that. I'm not trying anything negative I have to say. It's not about the patterns or the designers themselves. So just want to make that clear. Also, as we're getting into this, the light is going to change a lot. I'm still kind of figuring out how the light's coming into my apartment since the time change. It's very different, and it just might change. So we don't have any professional lights here at Knits by Mandy Studios. It's just a one-woman operation working with the windows that she's got. All right. I don't even know the name of this next pattern. I forgot what it is. Oh no. Oh no, I actually remember. Okay. So this in my hands is the second sweater that I ever made. And this, I feel like I'm squished in between this sweater and this tree, because this was a big boy. But this is the Bailey sweater by a shop called MMadisonMarie. I believe she has a website and an Etsy store, and that's how I first found her patterns. And she's also, I have a lot of items that I first made by her because she had a lot of great beginner patterns. And this is kind of a tunic styled drop shoulder sweater. It's all constructed in panels. So you do the first panel, second panel, sleeves, sew them all up. And this is knit in Lion Brand Wool Ease, and I believe the color is something like denim. I really love the color of this yarn. As you can see, it has this blue, but this like purple and green kind of throughout it when it hits the light. I really like the color. But if you haven't worked with Wool Ease before, this is a 80-20 acrylic wool blend, so you're not getting a lot of wool. Wool is kind of a misnomer, and I just would not work with this fabric again. I know there's a lot of discourse about using wool or using acrylic. I don't like how acrylic feels as a fabric. Now that I'm thinking kind of more about the warmth and utility of my garments, it doesn't always lend for the warmest, yet it also like doesn't breathe at all, so you're just sweating a lot. And I'm a very sweaty girl, so this is not really the fiber for me. However, it's very affordable. So if that's something that doesn't bother you, like definitely go ahead, because Lion Brand makes some beautiful colors. So that is the yarn choice and the construction. Some things that I don't love about the sweater itself are definitely the beginner mistakes that I made. Again, these are what make our items ours and unique, but just to kind of point out like where we've grown and where we've learned. I believe here, yeah, you actually, you can kind of tell. Right here, yes, there are some twisted stitches. I got things really messed up when I was splitting for the V-neck, and you can kind of tell here there's like a weird hole. And I don't like that this doesn't have a collar. I feel like it just looks a little unfinished. I don't mind the rolled hems and sleeves. I don't mind that these have that like unfinished look, but that doesn't really, I feel like, translate as well to the collar. Like back here, I think it just kind of looks unfinished. But I was very proud of this sweater, and I definitely wear this one kind of around the house. It's nice to throw on maybe sometimes and to have it for that. So that is the Bailey sweater. And then I'm comparing that to another V-neck sweater that I have, which is not similar in construction at all, but kind of similar in vibe, I felt, as long as the silhouette goes, as far as the silhouette goes. And that is my very V-neck Raglan by Jessie Maed Designs. And this is one of my all-time favorite knits. Not to say that it doesn't have its own things that I would change, which I will talk about. But this is the very V-neck Raglan by Jessie Maed Designs. It is a Raglan construction, so you start working back and forth before it is time to join the V-neck in the round, and then I think you join for the V-neck and split for the sleeves around the same time. Finish knitting down, knit the sleeves, add the collar, and it has this really just like simple 1x1 detailing. I knit this in Noro sock yarn, Noro Silk Garden sock yarn in the color S1. It was a pretty popular colorway, and I love it. I love how it looks. I love the color. I didn't talk about color in my like previous two garments, but I love how this has so many colors that it goes with everything without clashing with anything. At least in my wardrobe it works that way, which is really nice. There are, you know, like I said, some construction like whoopsies. I believe there's a hole up here. I did purchase like the bare minimum for the pattern, and very often I found with Jessie Maed patterns, she, like, the torso length's usually pretty short, but she does always like allow you for space to increase it, but that does, you know, affect the yardage you use. So I did not, kind of a beginner's, still more beginner's mistake, did not did not like add enough yardage. I should have just gone for that extra ball because I like that it's cropped. It was a little too cropped. Like, we took pictures at the cherry blossom this year in the spring, and like my whole like belly button was hanging out, and I was like, we need to retake these. Like, this is like my belly's just like out in a way that I didn't want it to be out in those pictures. No, again, we all need to wear the clothes that make us feel the most comfortable, and I just didn't feel comfortable with my belly out in that way, in that moment, especially if it's a sweater, you know? I do want it to keep me warm, but this is more of like a light layering piece. So I didn't mention in the last two that this was my second sweater. I finished this last November, so this was maybe the fourth sweater I ever finished, and I do feel like there's a marked difference in the like finished construction and how it looks. This is obviously a more polished polished look with also, I think, a more fun yarn, but that's just, if this was in like a different yarn, this one obviously I would still prefer this one. And this is, again, I feel like now I feel bad about my first knits. I love them, I really do. But I got better, and how cool is that, you know? Like, this is where we started, and this is where we're going. And when, like, of course, progress isn't linear. We can also just like fuck things up as you make, but you can see those improvements there, which I think is pretty cool. So I would probably make this pattern again before I made this pattern again, just because I don't really like making seamed sweaters. I feel like because it was one of the first things that I did, going from seaming things to doing things in the round, it was like, oh wow, I feel like doing things top down is way easier. But I know some people like to seam, so that's your jam. This would be a cool sweater. I think maybe just adding like an I-cord edge to all of the edges of like the top and the bottom would be a cool addition. So that is the Bailey sweater and Jessie Maed Designs. So the next two are chunky sweaters. Chunky, not necessarily. Textured, yes. One of them is chunky. And let's go into the comparison. So the first sweater I have is something that I've called my Gilmore Girls sweater. And this is something that I actually made in a partnership with the app Bellish on my TikTok last year. Bellish no longer exists. I no longer post on TikTok, so this is truly a relic of a past life. I was, at the time, I think a lot of people were posting like recreating something from a movie or a show, and I love the show Gilmore Girls. I've talked about it a lot, maybe, but I talk about it a lot in real life, so I'm always rewatching it, it seems. So I used the app, and I wanted to make something kind of compared and similar to Rory's like chunky fisherman rib sweater she wears in really early seasons. And I came up with this. I was at a place where I didn't want to make a cabled sweater yet. I was kind of nervous, and I did need to make this in time to post it for like the deadline we had put out. So I decided to knit it in a chunky wool, and I bought Drops Snow. And I've talked about Drops Snow before. It's a single ply wool, and boy is it itchy. It's bulky weight, and it's itchy. I don't like it, and for that reason, I don't wear this sweater a lot. I'll sometimes wear it if it's really, really cold, and I'll put like a thermal, like turtleneck underneath it, but you know it has to be really cold to want to wear two tank tops, or two turtlenecks. Not the same thing at all. So this is a bottom-up construction. I used the basket weave stitch, which I think has kind of gotten stretched out over time. It looked better, I feel like, when I first knit it. Now it kind of just looks like nothing. It's there. And tapered sleeves, which drop shoulder, and a kind of unique collar that I had a lot of trouble with. It was a very wide neck hole, and I started doing a twisted rib twisted rib to match this, and then it didn't look right. And so I went with 2x2, and it's very floppy and big. It's kind of fun, but I would like to execute this idea in maybe a different way because I don't love how it ended up turning out. Maybe with this fabric with more drape, this could be like a really cool, cozy look. And then the sleeves, the other thing that kind of went wrong on the sleeves is you can see here, there's just like a lot of extra fabric here that I didn't need. I picked up extra stitches, didn't need to do that. And then the sleeve tapers like really dramatically. You'll see in the sweater that I'll compare it to, it has a more straight sleeve. And I tend to like that look. I think for an oversized sweater more, you can see right now, this is not a knit, like a hand knit sweater, but these sleeves are tapered, and I think I really like to have a tapered sleeve in some situations for maybe more tapered garment, but I definitely like love the big sleeve as well. So I think for this use case, I would have done a longer sleeve that maybe I could have matched this with. This was something I really also had a lot of customization with. I didn't explain this at the beginning, but Bellish was an app that you could kind of plug patterns or plug yarn weight, your size, and like different features of a sweater that you would want, and it would kind of spit out a pattern. It was a really cool idea to maybe try out new things, but I feel like you can tell that I don't think the execution was, or the vision was perfectly executed here. However, I think the overall look of the sweater was cool. It was really cool to do a sponsored post, and that was something really new for me. So this was really exciting, being able to kind of do that, and I'll always keep this sweater for that reason. So that is the first sweater, and the second sweater is one that I most recently talked about on my channel, and maybe you could guess if you're that familiar with me, and that is the Ingrid sweater by PetiteKnit. So I feel like you can see where I'm talking about here when I say that these two have a similar vibe, right? They're kind of oversized. They have this funnel neck or this mock neck going on, and there's a lot of texture. I'm gonna say it, I love the Ingrid sweater more, but I'm very much like in the honeymoon phase with the sweater now. I wore this out to dinner with my boyfriend and his friends, and I came home and I just looked at him and I was like, isn't this the best sweater? And he's like, it's beautiful. And I'm like, I'm obsessed. And he's like, it's a great sweater. So I am going to be a little gushy for a second in comparison to this one, but I did a full review of this in my podcast episode if you want to watch that and see. I did have some criticisms as well, but I'll talk about briefly the construction. This is a top-down construction. You use short rows to shape the shoulders and also the sleeves. You join the yoke, knit in the round for the bottom, and then pick up stitches for the sleeves because it's also a drop shoulder. So this has a lot of different textures going on for it. And this is also knit in a worsted weight, wool as opposed to a single ply bulky weight wool. That being said, I feel like because of the fabric, it has a lot better drape than this piece. Sorry to my tree. It has a lot better drape. I think even the the texture is more defined, and technically like this is a lighter fabric. I feel like you should be able to see this better, but I think the stitches just got really stretched out over time. And again, this doesn't have that going for it because it's newer. And obviously like the neck, I just feel like works way better than this one, but that was, you know, a product of my time. And you can see here, again, this is cropped, and I finally start to like make things longer as time goes on. So overall, I might make the Ingrid sweater again, maybe not for me, because I think this is kind of one of a kind. I don't need another one. I literally can't make this again because the Bellish app doesn't exist. But I had a fun time customizing, and I think one thing that I was doing in the beginning of the year was being a little bit more creative with kind of freestyling some patterns, and that might be something I want to get into in the new year, and give myself a little more creative freedom to like really customize a design and give myself some time to do trial and error. Maybe I'll do that, but I also love just knowing that I'll come out with a finished object when I do a pattern. So that's something that I think I would like to emulate from this first object, is that creativity that came and kind of pulling that inspiration from a show, and instead of just kind of like knitting this because I saw it all over Instagram, which I'm very happy that I did, but let's be honest, that's why I knit it. So those are these two sweaters. I am trying to get a thumbnail. It's dark. All right. All right. So the sun's already setting. It is only 4 o'clock. I hate it here. But thank you so much for spending some time with me today to walk down memory lane and show you some old and new pieces. This was a fun video for me, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. You can leave in the comments some things that you have learned on your knitting journey and maybe some differences you see in the patterns that you've made. I'd love to hear from you. And I will see y'all soon. If you're in the States, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving and spend some time resting and relaxing with a family. And yeah, I'll see y'all soon. Bye.